Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, the Vigilante, and I'm back at it with another video. So for today's video, we're going to do none other than the great Harman Smith. And if you truly enjoy my videos, please give them a like, share, and subscribe. I'm really trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I really need your help. And remember, men, please wrap it up so you don't produce another Harman Smith. Let's get into the video.
It's safe to say that Game Pass has failed, that PlayStation has failed, that the entire third-party collaboration to destroy Nintendo has failed.
Harman, how can you sit there and say that Game Pass is a failure? Last year in February, they reached 34 million users. That is not a failure. PS5 has sold, I don't know the exact number, but they have sold a lot of consoles. That's not a failure either. And we just got Claire Expedition 33 that sold over 2 million copies within its first 12 days of launch. You are a freaking idiot.
Right. Right now, people are coping and seething about this. You know, they're in denial about this. They have this weird mindset that, the Switch 2 is going to fail, but it's a complete and total cope. You know, we've seen all kinds of narratives be thrown out there over the past couple of days,
The only one that's in denial is you, talking about that Xbox Game Pass is a failure. And you really need to do something about that hairline. With the size of your forehead, how massive that damn forehead is, you cannot afford to have that hairline recede any further.
The big one right now is that, ooh, Doug Bowser used the word diversity in an official statement. But yeah, Nintendo is succeeding. They're catching up to Sony. They will be as big as them.
Wow, this is something new for Harman. He actually is admitting that Nintendo is not big at Sony or Xbox or the PC gaming community. This is a shocker. But watch in the next sentence, he's going to change all that.
In the next 20, 30 years, there's just nothing that you can do to stop it. It's over, essentially. PlayStation and Xbox fail.
You just sat there and said that Nintendo will sit there and be bigger than Sony. So if they're failing right now, what does that make for Nintendo?
And the industry has begun to acknowledge that. They've bent the knee towards Nintendo, but right now they're trying to be kind of sneaky about it. They're trying to do this weird thing where they're just we still have Steam. Steam will save us from Nintendo. No.
Jesus Christ, Harman, I have never heard a single person on PC sitting there saying, oh, we need someone to save us from Nintendo. Please save us from Nintendo. Nintendo is almost not even a part of the conversation. You guys are just a step above mobile games at this point.
Let's make this absolutely clear going into this. Every PC game, not even just everything on Steam, but everything, on every major platform, on its own individual server, on its own storefront, on it from every developer, every publisher, no matter the genre, the age of the game, the relevancy of the game,
I think he might be talking about Breath of the Wild.
That is available on PC is also going to be available on Nintendo Switch, right? Any game.
If that was the case, they would already be on the Switch. You want to know why they're not on the Switch currently? It has nothing to do that they got this thing against Nintendo. It's because the Switch isn't powerful enough to handle a lot of those games. The Switch 2 isn't even going to be powerful enough to handle a lot of those games. The Switch 2's hardware doesn't compare to the PS5, nor the Xbox Series X, nor a PC. It isn't strong enough.
That has any kind of relevancy at all is going to release on Nintendo Switch and do better on Nintendo Switch.
Did Hogwarts Legacy do better on Nintendo Switch? How about Mortal Kombat 1? Did those games do better? Did they, Harman?
You're going to see this a lot going forward where every major third-party developer is going to do the best on Nintendo. It's going to be a very gradual process as people move away from the inferior PC format, but there is no benefit owning an expensive PC.
You can go buy a Steam Deck right now that's not that expensive and will be far better than a regular Switch will.
Over a Switch 2, right? And this is going to be very evident to most people. You can already kind of see this with the Switch 1. You can clearly see this actually, how
the only thing we can clearly see right now is that you have not bathed yet today.
Games like Minecraft, Stardew Valley, Terraria have these really massive audiences on Nintendo Switch in spite.
Harman, there's a much bigger following on Minecraft that is not on the Switch. Minecraft has sold over 350 million copies, and only 6 million of those copies were from the Switch. You need to use this thing that was just invented yesterday called Google. It's a search engine where you can type in, you get endless amounts of information on. It is an amazing feature that you can use.
Of primarily being PC games. The biggest PC game of all time, Minecraft, has had successful releases on Nintendo Switch. And I think that really goes to show you just where things are going to go from here.
Congratulations, the Switch could sit there and play a game that came out in 2009. Does that make you feel special?
You know, PC games are going to be ported to Nintendo Switch, while Nintendo Switch ports nothing to PC.
PC can play more Nintendo games than the Switch can.
So Nintendo Switch is the superior platform. Everything is going to be available on that.
Why isn't Black Myth Wukong on the Switch? Or how about Claire Expedition 33? Or how about Doom the Dark Ages when it comes out? Can you please explain that to me, Harman?
And, some minor third-party releases that nobody cares about will also be available on PC.
That made absolutely no sense, Harman. Do you mean that they're going to be on the Switch? Because you're sitting there talking about games from the PC going on to the Switch, so if they're minor and no one cares about them and they're not on the Switch and they're already on the PC, that means they're already going to be on there, so I think you're an idiot.
That is the reality of the situation. PC is an alternative platform.
No, that will be the Switch, sir.
It is something that exists, something that you can technically buy games on, but it's not as relevant as Nintendo consoles. It doesn't have the same caliber of games or franchises, and it doesn't have any relevant exclusive titles.
Neither does Nintendo. All those games that you preciously love can be played on a PC. Even your precious Princess Peach Showtime. But guess what? Nobody wants to play that game but you.
Everything on PC is available in a superior capacity on Nintendo consoles, right? There is simply no getting around this simple fact.
Harman, the Switch only has approximately a little over 12,000 games on there. Steam has an approximate of 89,000 games. So how can you sit there and say that all those games are on the Switch when they're not? Literally, Steam alone has almost 8 times more games, or a little over 8 times more games than the Switch does.
It's not an opinion, it is a scientific fact. PC games would have done a lot better if they had launched on Nintendo consoles, right?
Can you please show me these facts that you're speaking of? You're sitting there saying it's a scientific fact. The only scientific fact is that you need to pick a struggle between having a receding hairline and being fat.
And you are going to see a lot of this going forward. Recently, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom outsold Baldur's Gate 3 in spite of the industry's attempts at gaslighting you into thinking that Baldur's Gate 3 was some major cultural phenomenon. Baldur's Gate 3 is going to get ported to Switch too, right?
And when that happens, you will sit there and stop talking shit about it. You'll probably make a video sitting there saying how they bend the knee to Nintendo, but after that, we'll never hear a peep, just like we never hear you complain about Elden Ring or Cyberpunk 2077.
It's going to be the best version of the game on Switch 2.
Just like the unplayable mess of Mortal Kombat 1 was. You remember that one, Harman?
It's not going to have some major influx of new players who think it's the greatest game ever, because Baldur's Gate 3 is shit. But it is going to be available on Switch. And as a result of that, Nintendo owners are going to say to themselves that, wow, the greatest game ever made on PC is shit.
Oh, come on, Harman. We all know that you want to sit there and play that game. You want it on the Switch so bad, just admit it. You want to sit there and create a character that looks just like Princess Peach to where you can have things done to her.
Compared to even mediocre Nintendo Switch games. That's what this is going to look like. Games like Elden Ring are going to get ported to Nintendo consoles, and Nintendo fans are going to try them and realize that wow, this stuff is complete slop.
Wow, I just ate my words again. He actually talked negative about Elden Ring. This is the first time in weeks that he's done this. But I guarantee you that you guys are going to sit there and buy it. You guys are going to sit there and play it, get your ass whooped, throw a fit, and probably break your Switch 2 and go buy another one. So if the Switch 2 does sit there and outsell any other console, it's probably because you guys can't handle those games. You're going to break them because you're so used to playing the Nintendo games that aren't challenging or demanding whatsoever.
Duskblood's going to come out. And you're going to have people come out and say, wow, this stuff is complete trash. Like it's going to be a reoccurring thing with Nintendo fans. Every time these PC games get ported to Nintendo consoles, you're going to hear a lot of cricket tunes, right?
I mean, we did hear a lot of cricket tunes when it came to Princess Peach Showtime. I remember for a while that we never even knew about the game. I never even knew it came out until many months later, until your ass started talking about it.
You are going to hear a lot of just deadly silence. Like, nobody's going to get excited about The Witcher 3 or Cyberpunk or like any of these other like games on Nintendo Switch 2, right?
Witcher 3 sold over 50 million, while Cyberpunk 2077 sold over 30 million. I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of excited people that are going to play those games on the Switch 2 that were not able to play them before.
Cyberpunk 2077 is like actually in a lot of ways a really impressive port on Nintendo Switch 2. And nobody cares, because it is a mediocre release from a mediocre developer that I want to see curl up and die already. I don't care if it's on Nintendo now.
The only thing mediocre is Nintendo's hardware. Put some respect on Cyberpunk 2077's name.
CD Projekt Red is and always was a joke. And I will continue saying that, even as the game gets an official Nintendo release. Now that it's on Nintendo, PC gamers have no, incentive to, religiously, defend the game. They're going to have to move on to something else. And,
Harman, there are plenty of great games that are not all coming to the Switch 2 just yet. And you should be happy that Cyberpunk 2077 is coming to the Switch 2. This is the best game you are ever going to be able to play.
That something else is also going to be ported to Nintendo consoles. You see the problem. If these games really were spectacular, amazing 10 out of 10 masterpieces, people would be enthusiastic about them getting ported over. We got Split Fiction is coming to Switch 2, I think has been confirmed.
It's probably because Split Fiction is going to be a game key card, so that's probably the reason why no one really cares.
Nobody cares. When It Takes Two came out on Switch, nobody cared. When you had when Elden Ring got announced, nobody cared. These games can't hold a candle.
I mean, you care because you can't keep those games out of your mouth. I think you're seething at the opportunity to play not It Takes Two, but to play Split Fiction. But that would require you to actually have a friend that would play, and the Pokemon next to you does not count.
So what Nintendo is producing on their hardware near constantly, these games just weren't very good to begin with. And as more and more people begin to familiarize themselves with these PC masterpieces, more and more people are going to start saying what I'm saying, that
Harman, you are one of the only ones to ever sit there and say this. We have never met a fanboy as clear of a fanboy as you are.
That Ultima fans are completely full of it, that nobody cares about Baldur's Gate, nobody cares about Quake or Doom or Wolfenstein or any of these boomer shooters. People are going to start realizing that wow, the narrative that PC gamers were having all these crazy experiences on PC that consoles couldn't hope to match.
Don't sit there and throw Sony and Xbox into this one. They can play a lot of those games that are on the PC. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you're just talking about Nintendo.
Was completely untrue. The Legend of Zelda was better than the Ultima games. Mario, Metroid, Fire Emblem, the list goes on and on. Ultima was a giant nothing burger.
If the Ultima series was such a nothing burger, then they wouldn't have made so many games. Do you understand how many games they have made? They have made 9 main installment games and many spin-off games.
That has left no impact on the gaming world at all. And those games had ever received a proper port on Nintendo consoles. In fact, a handful of them did in the Super Nintendo games. If these games had actually come out on Nintendo consoles, more people would be willing to come out and speak out against them for not being that great, because they would be going up directly against their superior Nintendo equivalent.
Well, it's probably a good thing that they're not on the Nintendo console, because then you would be freaking out why everybody's playing those games over the Nintendo IPs. But that's it for my reaction. Please let me know down in the comments if you agree with me or not. Remember, men, to wrap it up so you do not curse us with another Harman Smith. And until next time, guys, stay vigilant.